So I have a fresh palette out here. We're going to mix some green. Green is probably the most troublesome. There's our Hansa yellow light, our cool side yellow that we have here. And it's going to be mixed with our Pthalo blue coming up here. So just a spot, just about a dime worth of paint, not so much. You don't really need to use too much because it's just using a letter size piece of paper for most of these projects. Here comes our Pthalo blue. Now the trick with the yellow and mixing with the green, the cool side yellow is really, really, really weak pigment, and so it will get decimated by the phthalo blue because the phthalo blue is a really, really, really strong pigment. So when you mix these two, you're going to use a lot of yellow. And once again, even though I'm using a lot of yellow, I'm moving a lot of the yellow off to the side so I can mix to the side so I can add more yellow in later. So you always want to mix to the side. And now I'm going to take a pinprick of the blue. Just a smidge, and it will radically start altering the colors here. The biggest mistake people generally use is they just like take a swipe of the green, they put it in the yellow, and then like they can't catch up because they keep on throwing yellow in there, and the yellow just can't keep up with the phthalo blue because the phthalo blue is so strong. It's like such a strong dye, and the Hansa yellow is a really weak dye. They're both transparent colors, but the yellow is like really weak. So whenever you're mixing the yellow in, it's always good to start with like a pile of yellow and just do pinpricks of the other colors. And this is kind of demonstrating some of the other colors I was saying, like the blue and the purple take titanium white to get them up to the proper saturation when you want to make them the most intense. But the greens, the oranges, and the yellows, and all those kind of take the yellow as the base. So you don't really add titanium white to those to get them to the most saturated color. So you'll add white to them if you want to make yellow and orange tints, like a creamsicle color and stuff. You use those to make tints. But if you're looking to make like the very high intensity color, you can't really add the white in it because it starts not instantly knocking it down. So what you want to do is you mix like your naphthol, your reds, and you start mixing them with yellows. So with the greens, oranges, and yellows, you don't, and the reds, you don't add any white. Once you start using the purples and blues, you add white, and that can get up to the proper saturation of that color. So by now, you can see I've just been adding just a little bit and little bits of the phthalo blue, and we're starting getting back to a neutral green. You see we passed through a nice yellow green a little while ago, but now we're into this getting close to this neutral type of grass green that kind of lays in between yellow and blue. So it's nice and bright. Generally people like mix it like really too dark, it ends up being like a forest green, or using the phthalo green straight. It just kind of looks pretty gross simply because it's like so dark and like close to black, and it's like a really, really deep color. So what you really want to do is you really need to use moderation when you're working on this stuff. Now I'm adding a little bit of water along the way to get it to spread out. So once again, a nice tip slowly across the square that I've made, doing all the edges first, and I'll do the inside last. I'm going to do two corners here, and to get a better angle I'm going to rotate my paper to get the other angles as well, like so. There. I move it around, I have a better angle at it. And you can see I'm just controlling the edge of the brush, because the brush has always come to a nice point, and you need that kind of wet paint to do that nice wet, like a point. If your paint's kind of moving around like toothbrush, or just kind of slurping it around on your page, it means it's too thick. You don't have enough control over it. What you want to do is you want to have this nice kind of liquidy paint, not like running like watercolor or like tea or coffee or something, kind of like a heavy milk or heavy cream or something that will have some pigment but can be spread around pretty easy. And the thing with these yellow based colors that you're gonna mix in, like yellows, and like they're like really much more transparent because they don't have the opaque titanium white. So they're gonna take at least two coats to get them to a nice closer to even transparency. You can see how even the opacity is on here. It's kind of like splotchy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one coat, a nice even coat of the first layer, and then going to wait for it to dry for a couple minutes and go over it once again. That will kind of eliminate the splotchiness because it's going to be a little bit more even coverage of paint. And kind of brushing the texture out of it so it's not going to be lumpy. Let's try to be neat about it. So the one thing to remember is always, always, always have an underdrawing down there, and always, always do it in pencil. Nice, clean shapes that you know you can work with. Because, like I said, using the paint and choosing the colors is hard enough with the brush. So what you really want to do is make sure you have your design ready to roll with your outline drawing first, and just kind of fill it in, kind of like a coloring book or stained glass. And that way you don't really have to worry about things. Just keeps things on a really simple level where you can consider where the color should go and what types of shapes you should have without really have to worrying about everything at once, like what shapes to use, how to mix things, like how do I put the brush down. So it's just kind of insane to start without an underdrawing. We're not talking about fine art here. We're talking about making design drawings and like really coming up with these really small, simple compositions. So I really want you to think them through. So keep that in mind. Here we are on the second square, and you can see that it's like dried enough that I can put another layer of paint on it. So I'm just kind of tracing over, and you don't have to be quite as clean with your second stroke. You just have to make sure you don't go over your lines again. But since you already have a layer of paint down there, then it's a lot easier just to fill in the splotchy parts and then keep the rest kind of even. So just like two layers with green, and it's generally good enough to go for a nice flat section, a nice color shape. So all you do is lay it on and then get rid of the texture by stroking it away in a nice even direction. You get your little point there, and just kind of do close little corners, just like little strokes. Obviously, other people have more or less attention for this, but it's not really that hard just to do follow the shapes that you put down and just go along the line. It just takes a little bit of practice just controlling the brush.